Coworker called out my thin hair. I thought I was joking back about hers, but now she's turning everyone against me and claiming I'm a bully. I work at a very small startup. By very small, I mean there are only 5 of us, including myself. With such a tight-knit group, it's been easy for all of us to get close. We see each other every day, and it's not unusual for us to head out to bars together after work just to hang out a bit more. This story starts late last week, when I decided to wear my hair in 2 braids to work. I wanted to try something new, and I genuinely felt pretty cute with them. As soon as I walked in, Annie, a coworker who's 27 and, for privacy's sake, let's call her that, looked at me and said, "Wow, I never realized how thin your hair is." The comment didn't hurt or even surprise me. I mean, I've always had thin hair, it's just the way I was born. I smiled at her and shot back, "Yeah. You too? Twains." I honestly thought I was just bantering back, but her reaction stunned me. She immediately shot back with, "Go to hell." I was floored, really. I had no idea what just happened. It surprised me even more because, well, Annie also has thin hair. Then, she just started ignoring me for the rest of the shift. Fast forward to today, and Annie has been completely avoiding me ever since. She's even going out of her way to try to get the others in the office to turn against me. With such a small team, word travels fast, and my coworkers have been keeping me updated on what she's been saying about me behind my back. What pushed me over the edge was finding out that once our boss gets back from vacation, Annie plans on reporting me for workplace bullying. No one in the office is really choosing sides, and honestly, I haven't asked anyone to get involved. This is between Annie and me. But today, one coworker did pull me aside and advised me I should apologize. But the thing is, I really don't feel like I did anything wrong. I don't feel bad, and I'm at a loss about what to do next. Should I apologize, even though I meant no harm? Or is there a better way to handle this situation? Wish me luck. I've written everything down, kept all my documents together, and honestly, I feel prepared walking in. Even if things don't go my way, I know I'll be okay in the end. I've always tried to see the glass as half full. There's always something good to find. I hope to be able to share an update by the end of today. Update 3. After work last Friday, my boyfriend must have seen just how stressed I was, because he whisked me away for the weekend. The past week had been weighing heavily on me, and he knew exactly what I needed: a break from all the drama. Now that I'm finally back home and settled in with my laptop, I can finally share what happened. That morning, my boss called both Annie and me into his office for a meeting. I came ready, determined not to be caught off guard. With me, I brought 2 emails showing that I'd tried not once, but 5 times to resolve things with Annie. I also had a detailed document, typed out word for word, recapping our entire interaction, and even a statement from a coworker. That statement painted a clear picture. Annie had been pointedly avoiding me, refusing to do some work tasks because of me, leaving early 3 different times just so she wouldn't have to close with me, and saying all kinds of negative things about me behind my back. Once we sat down, my boss let Annie speak first. She spun the story as though she'd just tried to start a friendly conversation about hair, and then had supposedly snapped with a rude comment about her hair thinning, which she claimed made her angry. According to her, the "go to hell" was said out of anger, and she insisted she didn't really mean it. When it was my turn, I calmly slid my document to my boss, the one outlining the entire conversation, line by line, from that day. I turned to Annie, and explained that I genuinely never meant any harm. It was all simply a misunderstanding. My boss read through my document and then handed it to Annie. As she read it, I saw the emotion come over her. Suddenly, Annie started crying. She explained that she's extremely insecure about her hair because of bleach damage. She wears extensions just to make her hair appear fuller, but hadn't been able to wear them for the past month because she couldn't keep them up. After that confession, Annie excused herself to the bathroom to try to pull herself together. While she was gone, I used the opportunity to show my boss the rest of my documents. When Annie returned, he asked her directly about ignoring all my attempts to work things out, and Annie admitted she didn't feel comfortable being alone with me. My boss then pulled out the statement from our coworker, and showed it to Annie. She quickly denied most of it, insisting that she always did her work. When asked about specifics, she simply brushed them off, claiming she couldn't remember not completing her tasks because, as she put it, she always does it. My boss brought the meeting to a close, emphasizing that workplace conflicts should never escalate like this, especially over something so personal. He gave Annie a written warning for not completing her work duties, for speaking poorly about a coworker, and for leaving early several times. He told her she could go home early if she wanted, and Annie left. After that, my boss turned to me and asked me to stay behind. He told me that he'd been considering me for a leadership role, but now he was having doubts because I hadn't resolved the conflict myself. I told him I truly tried, but he didn't want to hear it. He said he already knew everything about the situation. In the end, he clarified that I wouldn't be punished. The only reason he was being so hard on me was because he actually saw leadership potential in me. He offered to let me leave early too, so I did. I called my boyfriend as soon as I got to my car, and when I finished telling him all about it, he decided to surprise me with a weekend getaway to San Diego, exactly what I needed after the most exhausting week. Update 4. I came back from San Diego feeling like an actual human again, slept through 2 alarms on Monday, and still somehow beat everyone to the office. For a few blessed hours it was just me, the hum of the AC, and that post-beach clarity where even my inbox looked manageable. That serenity lasted exactly until my boss pinged us with a quick message. We were doing a high-stakes client demo Tuesday morning, cameras on, and he wanted me hosting it. Annie was assigned to pull the data and sit in to field any questions on her piece. No drama, just do the job. Tuesday rolled in with the aggressive brightness only fluorescent lights know how to pull off. Annie and I kept it civil, tight smiles, short sentences, clean handoffs. I had my laptop mirrored to the big screen in the conference room while the clients trickled into the Zoom. We were in that awkward pre-meeting small talk when the universe decided to remind me at his timing. A Slack notification slid across the top of my screen in the largest font known to man. It was a DM from Annie to a group I didn't recognize, and I watched, frozen, as the words appeared for everyone in the room and on the call to see, if she says misunderstanding one more time I'm going to lose it. Watching her bomb this is going to be the only fun part of my day. No one breathed. I don't know if you've ever heard a silence curdle, but that's exactly what it did. I clicked the little X so fast I almost dislocated a finger, smiled at the clients like nothing had happened, and said, "Apologies, our team is very communicative," because my brain picked that word and I'm still not sure why. Then I just kept going. Muscle memory took over. I hit every point, answered every question, live fixed a tiny bug by sheer force of will, and closed us out right on time. When their camera blinked off, the room stayed quiet for a beat longer, like it couldn't quite figure out if it was allowed to exhale. My boss ended the silence. 5 minutes, he said, and sent the calendar invite. I knew it was coming. We met in his office. Annie was pale and shaking in that way where someone has already cried once and is trying to hold a second round back. She said she was sorry before he even finished shutting the door. It was mean, and I'm embarrassed. I don't have an excuse, she said. No theatrics, no detours. Just that. I nodded because there wasn't much else to do with it in the moment. He told her to take the rest of the day, and then he asked me to stay. I braced for a lecture about screen sharing discipline, because yes, I know, but that wasn't where he went. He told me the clients had already emailed to say they were impressed by the demo under pressure, which made my hand shake harder than the Slack message did. Then he said he wanted a reset, not a postmortem. I need people who make fires smaller, not bigger, he said. And you do that for 30 days? He slid a short-term plan across the desk, me acting as point for the team while he worked on a performance plan with Annie and tightened some boundaries for everyone. It was written like a test, but it read like trust. Annie texted me later asking if we could actually talk, just the two of us, and for the first time she didn't tack on with boss present. We walked to the coffee shop around the corner. It was awkward in that prickly way where your brain wants to sprint ahead but your mouth has to move at a human pace. She told me she read my document again after our meeting last week and hated herself for how she reacted. Then everything came out in a rush: a bad bleach job last year, a dermatologist saying traction alopecia out loud for the first time, clip-in extensions that gave her headaches, a cousin at a wedding who laughed when one slipped and how that sound stuck. When you said twins, I didn't hear you. I heard every mean thing I've already said to myself, she said, staring at her hands like the answers were written there. I told her I wasn't interested in being anyone's punching bag while they figured themselves out, and I meant it. But I also told her I got why it all landed how it did. We set one boundary, clear and simple: no more jokes about appearances, either direction. Work stuff stays about work. She agreed. She actually thanked me for not torching her in the meeting earlier, which if I'm honest eased something tight in my chest I hadn't realized I'd been holding on to. The last odd thing happened on my first official day wearing the acting hat. Reception plunked a glossy PIR box onto my desk like it was a birthday gift. Big pink letters, fully thicker faster. It wasn't for me addressed to Annie, but for one split second, seeing it sit on my keyboard felt like a cosmic prank. I picked it up, walked it over, and put it on her desk. "This one's yours," I said. She went bright red, then laughed, actually laughed, A short incredulous sound. Of course it is, she said, and we both let the moment be what it was and not anything worse. So, I'm steering this ship for the next month. It's strange how much calmer the office feels when someone is just deciding things. I'm not suddenly perfect. I caught myself composing a long, defensive email yesterday and made myself delete it, breathe, and go talk instead. But here's something I know now. I can wear my hair however I want to work and still be the person who diffuses a room when it catches fire. Both things can be true. Update 5. By week 2 of wearing the acting hat, my calendar looked like Tetris and I taped a neon post-it to the demo laptop that says "Do not disturb" in a font loud enough to scare ghosts. The office felt steadier. People were doing the thing where they pop their head over a monitor to ask a question instead of drafting a manifesto in Slack, which I'm convinced added 3 years to my life expectancy. I started telling myself I could actually pull this off in an out-loud voice and not just in the bathroom mirror. Then Tuesday smirked at me. Our boss told us we had an investor walkthrough at 10 a.m. Not a pitch, just come see how you work, which is Silicon Valley for we're definitely judging you. The plan, 30 minutes in our conference room, me running the roadmap and live demo, Annie owning the day of questions. Easy enough. I got in early, checked the Wi-Fi twice, triple checked do not disturb, set water glasses at respectful angles like I was suddenly my mom hosting Thanksgiving. At 9:42 a.m., the building decided to recreate the surface of the sun. The AC died with a wheeze and the thermometer on the wall ticked up in real time like we were bidding on our own demise. By 9:55 a.m., the investor showed up 10 minutes early wearing all birds and an expression that said he's seen worse. I just convinced myself we'd sweat politely through it when the fire alarms test apparently scheduled, apparently ignored by everyone, but the universe started shrieking. There is no elegant way to shuffle a prospective investor down a stairwell. We ended up 2 flights down on a landing with a window that could have been a cutout of a cloudless, uncaring sky. People streamed past us in drabs and drabs clutching coffee and ficuses. I said, "We can move to the sidewalk," and he said, "I'm fine if you are," so I popped my hotspot on, opened the deck on my iPad, and used my car key as a stylus because my brain had decided that was normal. Annie surprised me. She didn't flinch. I handed her the printouts I grabbed out of habit bless muscle memory and she held them down with her phone so they wouldn't catch a rogue breeze and Mary Poppins themselves down the stairwell. Mid-sentence, my hair slid out of its clip in slow motion like it, too, was done with decorum. I fished a binder clip out of my bag and snapped it in place without breaking cadence. Somewhere between slide 8 and the part where I draw a box, then another box, then an arrow like I'm conjuring her in product market fit into existence, the alarm cut off. The quiet hit like someone had just opened a door underwater. We didn't move. The investor started asking the kind of questions that are really about your moral character but use the word pipeline a lot. Annie took 2 of the harder ones and answered them cleanly, no defensiveness, no hedging. When he tried to poke at how we'd handle a late-breaking request that would blow up a timeline, I watched her glance at me and I watched myself not say, "We'd survive it like we always do," but instead, "We'd reset scope immediately and protect delivery. Here's how," and it felt like stepping onto dry land after a long swim. We wrapped on the landing. We stood there for a beat like the building might test us on sprinklers next. He smiled small, real and said, "I said I wanted to see how you work. I didn't realize I'd get to see how you work on fire." He asked if he could take us to coffee across the street rather than tromp back up, which sounded like the best idea anyone's ever had. Over cappuccinos, he said he was putting together a small bridge round 4 teams he thought could scale without torching themselves. He wanted us in. Not a theoretical, maybe actual numbers, contingent on diligence unlocking in this operating rhythm. He looked at me when he said the last part. "Your running point is non-negotiable for me," he said, casually, like he was asking me to pass the sugar and not shutting my life 10 degrees to the left. Back upstairs, our boss shut the door and leaned on it like he needed it to hold him up. He didn't do the whole big speech. He just said, "Do you want this for real?" Out loud. I did the thing where my mouth tries to outrun my brain and said yes, but with a caveat, I'll be the person who makes fires smaller, but I'm not going to live inside other people's fires. He nodded, the kind of nod that only shows up when someone decides to mean it. Head of Ops, interim for 90 days. We'll bring in a real HR contractor, and you're not a feeling sponge, he said. He stuck out his hand like we were at the kind of job where that matters. I shook it and felt my heart drop into a slot like a coin. The hair gods were apparently bored, because 20 minutes after that, a courier plunked another glossy PR box at reception. Same pink shouty letters. Addressed to NEA again. I carried it to her desk and raised an eyebrow. She covered her face with both hands and laughed, which is a huge improvement over crying in bathrooms. It's like the universe keeps stressing as a metaphor, she said. We actually got an inquiry from them, she added, pointing at her screen. They want analytics for a campaign. Their tagline is "Get this, all hair is good hair." I stared at the email, at the brand I just held in my literal hands, and felt something click in that way that makes your rabs feel less like armor. You want it? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. With me on it, she said. I want to not be a weird about this anymore. So I looped her in, set up the kickoff, wrote the brief with the most careful sentences of my life, and we decided together not to turn our personal essays into strategy. She did the first pull of the data and it was sharp. It also made her cry a little at her desk, and I pretended not to see it until she waved me over and said, "It's happy. It's weird, but I'm happy." Thursday, the building rescheduled the fire alarm test for a time they promised this time would not include actual screaming, and we got headshots taken for the website. I wore my hair down because I wanted to, which feels like the smallest sentence and the biggest move. Annie showed up with her extensions in and then took them out halfway through because her scalp hurt and because she could. The photographer didn't blink. "Shin down a hair," he said, and then immediately flinched like he'd said something terrible. We both laughed so hard we messed up the next 3 frames. Here's the strangest part, the calm stuck. It didn't float away the second someone raised their voice. I caught myself almost sending a Slack message at 11 p.m. and instead scheduled it for morning, which I'm pretty sure is mental health in button form. The investor sent over a draft term sheet with our company name on it in actual letters, and I sat at my kitchen table and traced them with my finger like a 5-year-old who just learned to read. My boyfriend opened a beer and said, "Holy," and then hugged me so tight my binder clip almost snapped. I keep thinking about the stairwell. How ugly the carpet was. How loud the quiet felt after. How we could have waited for the building to give us permission and instead we kept talking. I can wear my hair in braids or down or up with office supplies and still be the person who pulls a meeting onto a landing and gets it done. I can set a boundary and also bring someone with me when they are ready to step over it. Both things are true. They always were. Now I just work like I believe it. Update 6. The term sheet stopped being theory on a Wednesday at 4:07 p.m. when DocuSign coughed up a pixelated burst of confetti on my laptop like a party horn that was trying its best. Our boss whooped so loud it rattled the plant shelf and bent a sign the old school way too, out of habit or superstition, I couldn't tell. I didn't cry, but I did sit very still with my palms flat on my desk and let the quiet land in my ribs. Then I went to Safeway and bought a cake that said "nice operating rhythm" in wobbly blue because the teenager at the counter wouldn't write anything with the word bridge on it after his manager told him they weren't licensed for architecture. We ate it standing up over the sink because the AC was threatening another mutiny and the frosting kept trying to migrate south. Thursday, the HR contractor arrived like a human air filter. Latla. Mid-40s, calm in that way that reads like competence from across an airport. She didn't bring a clipboard, which unnerved me more than if she had. She took our little conference room, set her laptop down, and somehow made the temperature drop 5 degrees by existing. Our one took exactly 30 minutes. She asked questions that were both narrow and kind. When I mentioned the old hair blow up like I was sliding a toe into cold water, she nodded once and said, "We document so we can forget." I wrote that down verbatim. She set up a real toe policy in a Google Doc in under an hour and somehow got Slack admin rights from our boss while she was sipping a Lacroix, which I didn't realize was a thing you could do that fast unless you were Google. The hair brand kickoff happened smack in the middle of all that adulting. Their head of marketing popped onto our call with a backdrop so airy it felt like her apartment had exhale. They wanted analytics, not a manifesto, but then she paused and asked if we had anyone with lived experience who'd weigh in off record on how they framed the language. Annie's name sat in my throat like a coin. Before I could overthink it into a circle, Annie unmuted and said yes, but only if I stayed on. Her voice didn't wobble. She talked about traction alopecia and a particular kind of mirrored shame that is a bathroom light at 2 a.m. She didn't angle for pity. She just said it like she was folding laundry. I told them thin runs in my family and that it makes me think of my grandma teaching me to braid with patient hands that knew everything. They listened, took notes, said thank you a lot of times in a way that felt like they meant it. After we hung up, Annie blew out her breath and said, "That felt like a tripwire I didn't set off." I told her that's what a boundary feels like when it's actually a path. The building decided to compliment our professionalism by failing again. Monday's AC held, but the elevator got bored between floors and the property manager left a paper sign taped to the buttons that said "Do not press this button" in the exact font I used for my laptop post-it, and I felt so seen I was mad about it. We hoofed up 3 flights with laptops and someone's discarded fern and I was half laughing, half wheezing when the investor's partner showed up early to observe our operating cadence, which I think is Latin for let me see what happens when I ask you for something you weren't planning to do at 9:31 am. What happened was the pipeline fell over the second he sat down. Not in a catastrophic way, more like a sullen teenager who refuses to load anything beyond 99% because it knows you're watching. I felt the pocket of quiet where panic lives open its mouth and I didn't climb in. I called it. "We're yellow on data," I said out loud, which is a sentence I've heard other people say in conference rooms and thought was performative until it came out of my own mouth while my own skin was humming. Annie didn't flinch. She was already elbow deep in a log file, and I watched her face do the thing where someone sees the shape of a problem and stops hating it long enough to fix it. We spun up a war room that was just our kitchen table with a legal pad, rewrote a query to baby it along, and stood there counting to 30 with our eyes while the bar crawled to done. I told the partner exactly what broke, exactly why, and what we were doing to keep it from tripping over the same shoelace again. He nodded once, slow. "I don't care that things go wrong," he said. "Only whether people lie about it." No one lied. The bar take to 100 like it had been planning that mercy all along. We ran the demo. He asked 4 mean-spirited questions that were actually fair. We answered them without hedging. He left with a handshake that didn't feel like a test. By 3 p.m. Our boss had an email from him saying, in Investor, that he was good with us locking the round. By 3:12 a.m., our boss shut the door and told me interim was looking silly and did I want to take head of ops without the babysitter word. He said it like he was handing me keys and not a weight, which is maybe what a good key is anyway. I said yes, with the same caveat as before, the fires can happen near me, but I don't live in them. He grinned the exact amount and said Leela was staying through the quarter and I was still not going to be the office feeling sponge. We shook on it and it didn't feel like a movie. It felt like a real human hand. Slack riot, Leela did the thing admins can do where the back hallway becomes visible. She found the private channel where Annie had messaged through her feelings at one time on the Doom demo day. It wasn't a den of snakes, it was 2 coworkers, an event that got way too much oxygen. It still hurt like a paper cut under hot water to see my name next to a sentence that read, "She weaponizes nice." The coworker who typed it is not a villain. He also is not a poet. I took a walk around the block and then I stopped at his desk and said, "When you call my calm fake behind a door, it makes me want to shut doors." He looked like someone had pulled his chair out from under him and then sat back down on his lap. He apologized the way adults do when they realize their cleverness broke a plate. He told me he was frustrated and that my tendency to take an extra breath before answering made him feel stalled out. I told him that for 30 days, my extra breath kept us from blowing on embers. We agreed on a new rule: if you think I'm hiding behind nice, ask me what I actually think in plain English, and I'll answer in plain English without using a single metaphor. He smirked and said, "Even your metaphors have binders." I told him to go check a dashboard and not call me cute names. We were fine by lunch. The hair brand threw a launch thing on a rooftop and, because the universe loves symbolic assignments, invited us. They wanted 5 minutes of B-roll of the brains, which is a sentence I still haven't recovered from. I almost said no on principle. Then I decided not to make it weird when it didn't have to be. We went. There was wind like a personality and those string lights that make everything look like your life might have a soundtrack. Annie started with her extensions in her bag and put them on in the elevator and took them back out by the guacamole because her scalp said absolutely not. I clipped my hair back with the same binder clip I've used for 3 weeks and dared anyone to call it unprofessional in my own head. The founder turned out to be a person, not a brand machine. She asked real questions, looked at us while she listened, and when a micro-influencer with a ring light the size of a life preserver squealed "Thin hair girls unite." Into a phone, Annie leaned sideways and bumped her shoulder into mine and said, under her breath, "Twins." It landed like both a joke and a reclamation. There are worse ways to heal. The other universe prank, a courier delivered another glossy pink rectangle, but this time my name was on it. Same shouty letters, but inside was a note handwritten in fat marker from the brand team thanking me for holding space for nuance, which I decided not to mock because I think they meant thanks for not treating us like morons, and also a satin scrunchie the size of a pastry. I stuck it on the snack table with a little post-it that said community hair bar because I refuse to hoard metaphors or accessories. People tried stuff on and laughed in the fun way, not the other kind. It smelled like coconut in the break room for 2 hours and no one died of it. The week wound up with headshots going live on the website next to new titles that made my stomach flip like a fish and then settle because the bowl was bigger. The investor's partner sent a single-line email to our boss that said, "The fires get smaller," which made me snort coffee in a very glamorous way. Leela ran a half day on how not to light matches in Slack, which she named something more HR safe, but the gist was say the thing to the person who can do something about it or don't say it. No one died of that either. The strangest hiccup hit today in the form of a calendar invite from the hair brand with a subject line that made me swallow wrong. Case study video request for analytics partner POV. I read it twice. They wanted to film a 2-minute testimonial about the collaboration, to live on their site, with faces. I felt about it the way I feel about someone suggesting karaoke, not because it's wrong, because it's aggressively not me. I forwarded it to our boss with a half-formed no in my drafts. Annie hovered at my desk, read over my shoulder like we were back in 9th grade, and said, "If you don't want to, I won't." Which is maybe the best sentence anyone's ever said to me in a professional capacity. We got on a call with their team, and I said out loud that we do Word, not ads, but we'll do an anonymized case study with graphs so Crespew could shave with them and a voiceover that doesn't turn us into characters. They pivoted instantly. No faces. No ring lights. All hair is good hair state is the line on their end and not ours. I watched Annie let go of her breath and didn't even make it a metaphor. Right now, we are a small company with a real title next to my name and a real HR person's email in my inbox and a calendar that looks like it swallowed 3 other calendars whole. The office is still overheated and someone keeps moving my do not disturb posted as a joke they think is funnier than it is. I wore my hair in 2 braids to work today because it is summer and my neck is a thing that exists and because I wanted to. Annie clocked them and didn't say a single word about thickness. She asked me if I wanted anything from the Baudier. I asked for a seltzer that pops like a tiny firework. Here's where I'm at. We sign the thing, we're not on fire, and when the Wayne picks up on a rooftop, I can't clip my hair with office supplies and talk about pipelines without losing the thread. Someone called my kindness a weapon in a room I wasn't in, and I didn't turn it into a sword. I turned it into a door. Both things are still true. Now I'm working like that's the policy. Update sent. The building finally chose a weapon other than the alarm. It picked water. I walked in on Tuesday to a smell that was equal parts penny jar and gym sock, which is not how air should feel. Our ceiling had a bubbling bruise above the server closet that we don't really use for servers because we are not 1998, but we do keep the router and a stack of truly tragic branded mugs in there. The bruise popped somewhere between 811 and 812 m. The pipe let go in a single wet sentence and then did a dramatic monologue. I watched a stream find the path of least resistance directly down our wall and into the power strip like it had read a manual on how to humble startups. Everything did the quick math. Laptop snap, shut. Cords came up like we were pulling weeds. Someone yelled for towels and we all looked at each other like any of us had ever owned a towel in an office context. Annie was the first one under the drip with the recycling bin, hair yanked into a knot that said we're doing this. I killed power to that whole strip and had a 10-second conversation with God on the topic of arcing. Leela appeared with a stack of emergency contractor bags from nowhere like some people produce gum. We triaged the closet, shoved what we could under desks or onto chairs, and learned the hard way that our drop ceiling is apparently decorative and not good at holding grudges. The landlord's guy did arrive, eventually, with a ladder that squeaked like a mouse was writing an angry letter inside it. He said how in a tone that made me want to pay more rent just to never hear how again. We got the building to cut water to that feeder line. Then we stared at the dark corner and listened to the slow, damp punctuation of a drip we couldn't fix yet. I took one breath, the kind I make a sport of now, and moved everything else. By 9:02 a.m., our office had migrated to the Korean diner on the corner because they have outlets, Wi-Fi that isn't shy, and a server who calls everyone sweetheart like a benediction. I bought the first round of pancakes as rent. We set up a war room that was a horseshoe of laminate tables and napkin dispensers and tried very hard not to spill syrup on diligence. The timing was hilariously rude. We had our first full board meeting on the calendar at 1 p.m. with the investor's partner dialing in from New York and a customer reference scheduled at 2:30 a.m. Also, the hair brand asked for a last-minute lift. Could we segment sentiment on their launch by region by end of day? The pipeline was yellow before the leak. I said let's make it boring, which in my mouth now means we're not going to flinch and we're also not going to pretend we're a hero. Annie looked at the diner napkin like it was a whiteboard and drew the shape of the query we needed to babysit. Her hair was doing that halo thing humidity does when it's having a personal day, and mine had committed to a texture I didn't know I owned. She didn't mention it. I didn't mention it. We drank coffee that was both acidic and medicinal and pushed the morning forward with a fork. At 12:45 p.m., the investor pinged me to say his LP wanted to pop in to observe. I had the same flash I get when someone says the word karaoke in my vicinity. We tested audio exactly once and then decided the mic gods had to love us or not. We put my laptop on an upside-down tray to hit the angle that wouldn't send them a live forehead. The diner server topped off our water glasses like we were at an actual conference table and whispered, "Break a leg," which felt like a spell I could live under. The board meeting started with a chorus of background noises you only ever get on Zoom: a distant dog, an HVAC unit coughing into a blanket, my own building's wet heart beating 3 blocks away. The investor here led with a round closure. He said our name and closed in the same sentence like he was trying it out on his tongue. Then, because the universe thinks it's a screenwriter, the LP introduced herself as having a background in CPG and regulation, and also, she used to run brand at a haircare conglomerate. She smiled the kind of polite that could cut rope. "I'm here for the repeatability," she said. I wanted to hand her our laminated values and a pancake. We walked through the last 30 days from a diner booth like it was a case study we lived in on purpose. We showed a burn chart I drew with a Sharpie because my usual graph looked fussy on the little webcam window. I told the truth about the morning's mini flood in the same tone I used to say we delivered sentiment by region on Tuesday. The LP did the kind of questions that are yes/no and shape an essay in soul. How do you keep scope from creeping when a client cries? What's your policy when Slack gets queue? Where does nice end and boundary begin? I didn't give her metaphors. I told her what we do now: we say the constraint out loud and we document it so we can't stop thinking about it twice. Somewhere in there, the diner's bell rang because someone's grilled cheese was ready and the LP smiled with her actual teeth for the first time. Our customer reference joined from a car. He was at his kid's soccer practice and still called us boringly reliable, which is the most expensive compliment I've ever heard. When we got to the slide called Hair Brand Anonymized, the LP asked for color. I paused the exact amount and said we had done a short off-record frame with lived experience and set a line between empathy and advertising. Annie didn't flinch. She held my eye and nodded once. The LP said, "Good," in a tone that comes between a test and a blessing. The meeting ended without a single stillborn congratulations. Just a clean talk soon. My body realized it had been bracing and I almost knocked the syrup into my lap by relaxing. The investor texted me 10 minutes later, "LP is in." She said, and I quote, "They make fires smaller, and they don't romanticize buckets." While I was still looking at that sentence like it might change shape if I blinked too hard, the hair brand paint, a micro-influencer, had used a before/after with a spinning caption that made the FTC twitch, and their general counsel wanted to make sure our chart stayed on the side of lawful boring. They asked for an emergency review of copy that included the word transform, which made every compliance hair on my arm stand up. I told them to send it all, and we'd mark it like we were grading a paper we didn't want to fail. I looped Leela because I like my own paycheck. We set up camp in a second diner booth and pulled legalese through a colander. Annie flagged 2 spots where the curve looked like a miracle and was actually just weekend bodies. I rewrote a sentence that originally implied causation into one that promised absolutely nothing except to exist. We sent it back with track changes that read like a sigh. Their counsel replied fast with 3 green checks and 1 bless you. I wrote back not clergy, just ops, and then deleted it because I am a grown-up. The plumber finally fixed the pipe that afternoon, which is to say he stood on our squeaking ladder, did something with a wrench, and then patted the elbow joint like it was a dog. The carpet was a sponge. A landlord offered industrial fans that sounded like a jet engine trying to blow dry a planet. No one could think in there. I told the team to grab what they needed and go home or go to the park or go anywhere that wasn't a symphony for wet cardboard. We decamped in shifts. I stayed to sign for a dehumidifier the size of a studio apartment and answered emails with my feet up on a banker's box labeled Tax 2019 like it might have wisdom. Somewhere in the drizzle of all that, a recruiter slid into my inbox with a subject line that tried to be casual and failed: quick chat. Head of Ops at Exco Comp Excellent. The logo was a competitor in the way that cats are competitors, same species, different personality, lots of naps. I stared at the email and felt my stomach do the drop it does on a roller coaster and then flatten. I forwarded it to my boss with the most neutral line ever typed and then closed my laptop for 11 minutes and looked at the water stain forming its own content on our ceiling. When I opened it again, there was a reply: "If you want to talk, I won't be mad. If you don't, come by my desk tomorrow and we'll fix your comp without a performance of corporate theater." He did not say please. He did not say don't. He said what he meant, which is becoming a theme. I did go by his desk. He slid a paper across it with numbers that made my shoulders drop a quarter inch. Equity bumped. Base bumped. A sentence in black and white that said fires near, not in, which yes, is not a legal term, but there it was. I'll take magic where I can get it. I took a breath and said yes while also saying I was not going to be the person who put out fires others light for fun. He said, Then part of your job is making sure no one lights for fun. I said okay, because that sounded like power and not martyrdom, and I am trying very hard to learn the difference. The weirdest grace note came from Annie, of course. She showed up on Thursday with her hair cut. Not shorter like I needed a trim. Short. Intentional. It framed her cheekbones and made her eyes look like she'd just found them. She stood in the damp doorway of the office we couldn't fully inhabit yet and said, I told my stylist I was done bleeding for a volume. I didn't do a speech. I just said it looked like a decision and that it looked good. She reached out and touched my binder clip, still hugging my top knot because the dryer had only gotten as far as board. Twains, she said, and it wasn't about hair at all this time. The hair brand sent over the first cut of the anonymized case study. No faces. No ring lights. Just crisp graphs and a voiceover from a person whose vowels sounded expensive saying that clear data made brave choices easier. They credited an analytics partner who protects delivery, and even though it was a sentence missing our name, my heart still recognized us. We're in a temporary coworking space while the carpet molds. It smells like eucalyptus and ambition and has phone booths that are too small for human shoulders but perfect for whispering I'm not going to be cute about this before you say no to something. Leela has a spreadsheet of facilities quotes and a way of saying no to vendors that makes them thank her. The investors LP wants to sit in on our quarterly and asked if there would be pancakes. I told her I could promise infrastructure and maybe a donut. The elevator here actually stops when you ask it to. The AC hums like a friend. I wore my hair down today because it was dry out for a minute and because my neck existed in peace. Annie didn't comment. She asked me if I wanted to see something cool and showed me a draft of an internal doc she wrote for data reviews called How Not to Marry Your Query. It starts with take a breath. I almost cried at my keyboard in a very professional way. There is still a water stain on our old ceiling shaped like a country we never meant to visit. The fans are still doing their impression of a hurricane recital. Somewhere, a recruiter is probably still trying to calendar me. Somewhere else, a teenager is writing nice operating rhythm on cakes he swears are not bridges. In here, we're doing the boring, holy work of not making everything a show. When the pipe cracked, we didn't become a different company. We just moved tables and kept talking. I can sign comp papers and still mean it when I say I won't be a sponge. I can hold a binder clip in my hair and also hold a line. Both things are true. Now I'm operating like the ceiling might leak and the meeting will still happen and the pancakes will still arrive hot.